Welcome everyone to the December 20th Racial Equity and Policing Commission meeting. I'm the chair, Nicole Salazar Hall. I do need to read one quick thing. This meeting is a discussion among commissioners and select presenters. The public is welcome. Items may be scheduled or moved or discussed during a different portion of the meeting based on circumstances or availability of speakers. This meeting will be an electronic meeting pursuant to the chair's determination that conducting the meeting at a physical location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The commission meeting will not have a physical location and all attendees will connect remotely. Members of the public may provide public comment by joining through Zoom, and we have the address available. Let's move to open dialogue. So during this portion of the meeting, commissioners may raise topics and discuss current events that may impact or influence the commission's overall work, discussions, and deliberations to provide recommendations to the mayor and city council regarding the Salt Lake City Police Department's policies, budget, and culture. There will be no action taken during this section of the meeting, and matters discussed during this section of the meeting may be scheduled on a subsequent agenda for follow-up. Is there any public open dialogue for today?
Nicole, I just wanted to comment briefly. Don't know all the details, but there was significant impact on our schools with threats towards schools and students, etc. And from an outside perspective, I'm pretty impressed with the department's response for that, and just want to acknowledge the work of those school resource officers. And as we work as a commission to find a balance for what their role is and to be supportive, etc. It illustrates the importance of recognizing that they are there for a security function. And I think that this was an example of a success of that. Hopefully, we don't repeat these, and these are infrequent events, but these high intensity, low frequency events are a part of the work. And I think as we balance how to ensure that our students are safe, this is one piece of it to keep in mind. I just want to acknowledge what, again, from an outside perspective, looks like good work by the department.
Thank you, Commissioner Warden.
I would like to second that too, Chief. Thank you.
Any other topics for open dialogue or follow up on what Commissioner Andrew Worden had to say? Nope. All right, well then let's move to the public comment section. Attendees may be provided 1 or 2 minutes of time determined by the number of attendees and the time available determined by us, the commission. So for anyone who is available for public comment, please observe the time limit stated at the beginning of the public comment period, which is limited to 15 minutes total, so that everybody may have a chance to speak. We need to keep comments free of discriminatory language referring to a person or group based on their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, sexual orientation, disability, age, or other gender identity factor. Items or comments that disrupt the meeting, intimidate other participants, or that may cause safety concerns are not allowed. Do we have anyone for public comment, Moana?
I see Beverly Hawkins, and I will time for 2 minutes. Go ahead, Beverly.
Thank you for joining us, Beverly.
Beverly, you're muted, but you're allowed to speak. You have technical.
Oh, how about now? Does that work?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Right.
You have 2 minutes. Yes.
Thank you. And I just want to say it's nice to be back observing all of you, all the good work that you folks are doing. And of course, I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters. There were a lot of recommendations in the Phase 1 final report, and enough so I think that could be overwhelming for any reader. I'm curious if the commission has come up with a plan for monitoring each of the recommendations, consideration, and possible implementation by the City Council. It would be my hope that kind of monitoring would be updated regularly and made available to the public on the commission's webpage. That's part one. Part two is a related thought that have you given any consideration to prioritizing the recommendations? Obviously, you want all of them to get done, so it's not necessarily in their importance whether they get done or not, but prioritizing the order in which they might be addressed, again, to make it a bit less overwhelming for the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. The chair wants to address that, or anyone else?
Yeah, I could probably start to address that. We have not discussed just yet what kind of time frame to follow up with the chief and mayor on these recommendations and the follow-up. I was going to propose that we revisit them every 60 days to see where things are at. 60 may be a bit too early. 90 may be more feasible with some of the recommendations, not all of them. Some of them may be more of a 6-month sort of thing. Others may happen more quickly. But I was going to propose maybe a 90-day follow-up period so we can make sure that we're always staying on top of some of these recommendations. As for prioritizing, a lot of them are very interconnected. A lot of them do come down to recruiting and training. And once we have a lot of those pieces in place, the rest will start to fall into place a little more easily. So I don't know that we need to necessarily prioritize anything. And of course, other commissioners, please jump in. But I think some will end up having to be prioritized just because of logistical issues. And I think the recruiting is the biggest one that is going to need to really be focused on before some of the other things we want to get done will be able to be accomplished.
And I think too, if I may, Beverly, I think your question comes at a great time because the chief is here to give an update on those recommendations, some of which have been implemented and others are in progress, and then a conversation about those still yet to be done. So I think there's a lot of information coming in this meeting about that question, and I'm eager to hear that as well.
And maybe after we listen to the chief's report on phase 1, that we can then talk about prioritizing each of the items and go forward.
And as we have our subcommittee meetings coming up in January, these can be part of those discussions about follow-up. And I can be the person on being able to update the website so that folks like you, Beverly, will be able to see what's happening pretty much in real time.
Commissioner Salazar Harl, could I weigh in just a minute? Look, we have 17 pages of recommendations and follow-up to talk about tonight, so we're going to probably about 9:30 or 10 tonight. But I think Beverly Hawkins makes a good point, and you as well. There is so much on this list. We have a lot to go through, and I think the more often we can check in, I think maybe 90 days quarterly, but to keep you guys apprised of what we're doing would be a good kind of a good measure, because there really is a lot to talk about and there's a lot of things happening. So, and there's a lot of things we need your support on. So kind of my recommendations, but I'll follow your lead.
I listened just a few moments ago to the Newark, New Jersey changing and the process that they're using. And that's what they are doing, is prioritizing and looking at one item or 2 items first and then going to another. So I think it'd be a good idea for us to do that.
Right. There aren't any other.
No others? Okay.
Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you so much, Beverly. Thank you for coming. I really enjoy having you here. Let's move to item 4. Has everyone had a chance to review the February 10th and November 3rd pending minutes? Yes,
I've
Commissioner
taken a
Jordan.
look at them, and I would move the approval of the minutes for the previous February meeting.
Thank you. Anyone opposed to approving those minutes?
I have a comment on November. Are we talking February? I was comfortable with February.
Okay, what's your comment on November, Commissioner?
Just a statement where it's attributed to me concerned about the Ranger program and the but potentially an unhoused person with a weapon, and that is correct, but it was in response to Director Riker saying that that is an issue that they have, and it felt like a jumping off point to talk about potential larger issues with that. So I just want to be sure that I'm not trying to pigeonhole the unhoused, but that there is a variety of risks that those folks may face, and there should be oversight. And then just a clarification that I was also giving a recommendation on the thoughtfulness of the hiring process, so you get the right temperament for someone to be more of an advocate or a facilitator from the city than a traditional law enforcement role, which I think dovetailed with your point, Commissioner Hall, about coming back to the commission with a hiring plan. So just a quick clarification there. I just wanted to make sure that that was the way I intended that comment. So I was good with the rest of it.
Moana,
I
can you
can-
make that
I can add that.
clarification?
I'll do both of those, Commissioner Adjurd.
Thank you.
Perfect. So with that clarification, is anyone opposed to adopting the February 10th and November 3rd minutes? All right, they are both adopted. Thank you. Now let's move on to what we are all waiting for, the phase 1 response report from our own Chief Brown. So we have the phase 1 report, and I believe, Moana, please correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to go recommendation by recommendation, but the subcommittee chairs are going to be asking questions about the report.
They'll be reading, and then it will be more of a conversation. So they'll read the recommendation that you all made in their subcommittee, and then the chief will answer.
Okay, perfect. So let's start with the training. Commissioner Davis.
I will pull it up on my screen so you can see Commissioner Davis.
And as Moana's doing that, commissioners, thank you for your time. We've put a lot of work in this. What you just scrolled by there is kind of an overview. Go back to that one right there, page 3. Those are the recommendations. That's kind of, they're color coded in a green, yellow, and I think red. Green are the ones that we've accomplished, and then the page in which we've listed those. Recommendations are in progress are marked there in yellow in the page, and then red, where it's things that we have yet to accomplish. They're on our radar, but it takes a little more time, staffing, and budget. So that's kind of a summary as we go through the pages. So, and then, yeah, please, let's have a conversation about these. This would be really boring if I just have to read through this whole thing. So your input is valuable.
All right. Are you able to see that, Commissioner Davis?
Under the training, the first recommendation is to create a process to target, to outreach to officers of color to increase the diversity of the training program.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Davis. And Yvette Zayas, Lieutenant Yvette Zayas is with me today. She's been instrumental in helping the department with these recommendations and bringing officers to the table and the conversations we're having. So Yvette, please jump in wherever you would like. But we heard that recommendation, Commission, and we took it to heart. In fact, we've accomplished, this is marked as an accomplishment. The current FTO demographics, or the field training officers, are, we have 77 male, we have 6 female. The different ethnic background, we have 14 or 16.8%. We looked at ways in which we could increase the pool of our FTOs and diversify that pool more. And so we went and we looked at different requirements to be an FTO. And we came back with, there was concern that everybody that put in, there were only so many spots. And so they had to just decide who could go to these trainings. And what our training unit or what the program has done is that if people put in to be an FTO, we let them into the program. We want everybody to go through that program. That's inclusive. That brings everybody to the table. And that will help increase the diversity of our FTO program. Another thing is that we have a lot of lateral officers that come to us from other agencies. We used to have it so that you had to be with Salt Lake City for 3 years before you could apply to be an FTO. And we respect the service that these lateral officers bring to us. And so we've changed that program so that it's 1 year of service to the department and 2 years of their previous experience. I think that will also open up the pool of officers that would want to jump in and to do this job. And then the long-term goal is, if we're looking at promotional processes, and if you're going to promote to a sergeant or lieutenant or up the ranks within the police department, we're looking at making the FTO program have some weight in that process. So it becomes very important to be an FTO. And again, that will hopefully generate more diversity and more applicants in the FTO program. So with that, is there any questions? I mean, again, we mark this as green, but it doesn't mean we're done. We've got more work to do, and we're going to always look for ways to increase the diversity of our FTO program.
Also to add, Chief.
Question
Sorry.
I'd like to ask regarding bullet number 2, the 1 year of service for people that are coming in as laterals. Will there be sufficient oversight to ensure that they're doing it the Salt Lake Police Department's way, city department's way, or that they are not doing it the way they would have done it elsewhere?
Yeah. Lieutenant, did you want to jump in on that one?
Yes, we always make sure, because it's a week-long school, so that we want to make sure that they are doing it our way and understand that they're doing it our way and are culturalized into the Salt Lake City way, like you said. Also, something to note that I forgot to put on there is that every year we do at least one FTO recruitment where we're offering this opportunity for people, so people don't have to wait years on end to become an FTO or field training officer. We offer this typically multiple times a year, providing the opportunity. And with us having so many recruit classes, we are going to need more and more officers to step up to assist in that endeavor.
And Commissioner Davis, to your point, I remember you said we don't want quantity, we want quality. And so yes, we will. The bar to be an FTO here in Salt Lake City is high, and we will keep it there because we want people to instill the very best practices within our department as we move forward.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this area number 1? Any other comments? Okay, we'll go on to area number 2 then, training not prioritized or mandatory. No budget to enlarge co-responder model. That's the issue. It's a crisis intervention team that we're talking about. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Yes. We want everybody, all the officers that respond to these type of calls within the city, to have this training, and it's important. Over the years, it was mandatory, but through the growth and through some different evolutions, some of the individuals that we hired didn't come to the department with those credentials, and some of the laterals that we hired weren't trained when they came here as well. So we did an audit to look at what we're doing and who we have within the department, and we have 87 recertifications that need to occur within the department. That's as of October 2021. There are 56 full-time certifications needed to occur within the department. So we needed not only recertifications, because every 2 years you need that, you need online or some sort of recertification. And then again, we want everybody. These are 40-hour classes to be certified in that crisis intervention training. So we were very appreciative. I know the commission recommended, this was a recommendation that we implemented early as we started in these conversations last fall, but it's still ongoing with some of the staffing shortages that have occurred. We haven't been able to hold those academies like we've wanted. In fact, the last academy event was in October. Is that right?
It was actually in November. Well, actually, for us, it was in October, but some other cities had offered some. So we actually offered it up to our officers as a invite to say, hey, if you would like to attend this week-long course that this agency is hosting, please feel free to attend so that you can get your recertification hours.
And when we do a 40-hour certification, you pull somebody off the street, that leaves, somebody's got to answer those calls for service. So Commission, at your recommendation, we appreciate the additional overtime budget so that we can backfill behind those officers, because I mean, we still have to answer those calls for service. We have a responsibility to our community. So there are now 5 scheduled academies in 2022 with the possibility of doing more in the recruit classes. So we're going to hire a recruit class in January. And if some officers want to jump in during the week of training that they get this CIT training, they can do that as well. So that's what we're working on. I think we have a good path forward. We appreciate how important this is to the Commission. And I want you to know that we're working on it and we'll continue to work on it as one of the recommendations.
Thank you. This particular issue is really hot on many people's agenda, Chief, and we appreciate your work and efforts to certify and recertify people for this. Are there questions that any of the commissioners would like to ask or comments? All right, we'll go ahead to item number 3. This is regarding the Training Academy and in-service curriculum, training concerns related to equity, implicit bias, community, policy curriculum in the academy and in-service training. We are interested in knowing what's being done and where those areas can be covered. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner. This is, again, very important to us as well. And one of the things as we sit down as a department and the training staff, what we don't want to do is develop a curriculum for ourselves. We value the community, and we would love to see the community come in and represent the different ethnicities and groups here in the city and be a part of those discussions to help us create a curriculum, to determine, help us outline what costs it may be, and then a training schedule. So we are going to work with CAB, which is the Citizen Advisory Board. Tanya Hawkins will be the chair of our CAB as well. Because of COVID, we've had to kind of put a moratorium on some of the work we're doing, but Tanya, we've got a lot of work starting January, and I'll be reaching out and to you, and we'll bring the team back together, so to speak, and we'll look for community members that can help us go through a curriculum and help us develop that and then implement it in our in-service and our academies.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, Chief. Thanks.
And Tanya, you are part of the training committee, right? So you will keep us informed.
Of course, that is right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments regarding item number 3? All right, we'll go ahead to item number 4. This is regarding recruitment, no full-time Salt Lake Police Department recruiter. And that is an issue that we think is important in terms of diversity and having somebody, having people not having to wait so long also. So Chief, can you tell us where we are with that?
Yes, we are working very hard on recruiting. In fact, in City Council last week, we just offered positions here within the Salt Lake City Police Department. This is a new hire class. These are the young individuals from our communities that we're hiring, hopefully 30 of them. And we offered jobs to them. And I wanted to tell you that of those 30, almost 2/3, 66% were diverse in their ethnicity or gender, which is fantastic. That's a great move forward. But there's more we can do. There's more we can do. And We wanted to talk to the commission to do this. We would really love to have that full-time recruiter for the department. Right now, that falls to the outreach team and the PR team and some selected officers that come and help us. So if we, in doing this, we're looking for 2 full-time employees. One to be an outreach officer, somebody that would go out into the community, that would attend the fairs, go to schools, wherever we send them, and a team to follow. But also somebody in-house that is specialized and skilled and trained in the recruitment aspects. And I've talked to Director Deb Alexander who's over our HR department. She's a great partner, and it's been in cooperation with Deb and her team that we've been able to accomplish just what we did with this new class hire. And she's committed to it as well. So we would love to have those 2 individuals. One would be an officer and one would be assigned to Deb Alexander's team in HR, because outreach and recruitment is not the same thing. They're different. And so somebody that has those skills to recruit would help us and direct us in our outreach. But that does come with a price tag. It's about a $350,000 ask, and that's annually. So if the commission feels strongly about that, we'd appreciate your support as we move forward. Another thing that we would need is there are vehicles that are needed. There are travel expenses if you're going to go, to other cities in the state or even out of state. There are travel expenses. There are promotional items and equipment fees. One of the things that we talked about in the commission was our current recruitment video, and I don't think it was up to the standards that you wanted. So we would like to do a new one, but they're a little bit costly. They're about $50,000 to hire a professional team and have them come in and help us develop that video. There are promotional costs, billboards, flyers, and different things like that. And then there's overtime needs that, when we go out, it's not just one person, we take a team with us. So we take other officers that are on the outreach team. So that's kind of the cost. That's the direction we're looking. Yvette, did you want to weigh in on anything there?
No, sir, I think you covered it. You covered the whole outreach component, which I think would be really beneficial in our social media. I'm not sure if you've noticed it, but our PR team has been great in recruiting out there.
Yeah, we recently hired a new PR director, Brent Weisberg, and he's really stepped up the game. If you follow us on social media, you'll see a lot of the things that we're doing that are building trust and relationships in the community. Another thing that we're trying to do, when we test, sometimes we'll say at Saturday, the 22nd at 10 a.m., we're doing our written test, or we're doing a PT test. What we're trying to do now is to give people more opportunities so that they can go on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon, maybe in an evening, to take those tests. Because if you just can't make it because you have to work, or if you're an out-of-town applicant, you can't get into town. We would like to make it a lot easier to join our team. And so we're looking at doing those things. If we find somebody that's an exceptional lateral hire from another agency that wants to join our team, a lot of times we would say we'll get back to you, but we don't want to get back to them anymore. We don't want to lose them. So we'll hire them on the spot. We'll give them an assignment within the department until we can get them through an academy. That's helped us with our recruitment. And then we just recently, in the crime control plan, the mayor and myself, we rolled out our recruitment. One of our goals is recruitment and to become full staff by June of 2022. And so there's now a hiring bonus for not only the officer that goes out and recruits their friend from another agency, or anybody to join our team. There's an incentive of $2,500 for that officer, and also the officer, the lateral officer that comes in will get another $25,000. So there's $5,000 on the table for those great officers that we're looking for. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
The 350,000, is that for 2 people, and that'll cover their expenses as well as their salaries and benefits?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's about 100. Yeah, that would do that. But it's an annual cost. It's not a one-time, so we got to pay them every year.
Right. Is that cost though comparable to the cost of other people of lack skills and expertise within the department?
That's a competitive, I think that's a competitive wage, because we want that recruiter to be top notch. And then we'll hire an officer, and their full-time job will to do that outreach and line up those fairs and those different engagements.
All right. Questions anybody has, comments? This is a process that's in a project that's in process, and we need to do whatever we can to urge the council for funding related to this. And you don't have the funding yet, do you?
No, we don't, sir. We don't.
We'll need to approach the council and see if they are as committed as we are. All right. Other questions?
I see Commissioner McDonald and Commissioner Johnson.
I have a question. I'm glad to see that there's a focus on recruitment. How about retaining? Is there anything put in place to make sure that once we recruit these candidates and officers, that we put efforts in place to retain them, make sure they stay?
Good question. Chief?
Commissioner McDonald, that's a great question. And one of the things you saw, not only Mayor Mendenhall do last year, but our council step up and pay the officers of the Salt Lake City Police Department the best wage in Salt Lake City, and the commitment to our officers, because there's nobody in this state that does the work that these officers do, that are put into these volatile crisis situations that they do every day here in Salt Lake City. So that really did help. Another thing that we've done is Lieutenant Zayas, I'm sorry, has been very instrumental in helping us hire our own licensed clinician here within the department. We have one now that walks our halls, that talks to officers, that goes to lineups to help them with the things that they see day in and day out on the job they do. So that's helpful. So there's not just one thing, there's a lot of little things, but I think we're on a good path forward.
Another thing I'd like to add is that, as our staffing numbers grow, we're a 700 plus department with our civilians, and we offer more opportunity than any other agency does. And as our staffing numbers grow, we're able to keep people there because they're going to have a chance to do the different units that we have out there. We have the tuition and whatnot that we offer, and a lot of agencies don't have that take-home card program like we do, and that's something that's a benefit with us as well.
I suppose the commissioner's issue would be whether those are being used as recruitment tools or retention tools or not. Are we using them in that way?
Commissioner Davis, yeah, but we could do better. And if you look at the last bullet, it says engaged in a continuous improvement process. This is going to be something that I would love to come back on a quarterly basis and talk about what we're doing, what we need, and what's working, what's not. Because this isn't one and done. This is one of those things that we'll keep talking about for years to come here in Salt Lake City, to make sure that we have the tools, just like you're talking about, the video that shows what we offer here in Salt Lake City, the different assignments like Lieutenant Zayas is talking about.
Thank you. I think those are great things to use, and I think we ought to use them to our advantage to ensure that we get the recruiting and the retention that's Commissioner McDonald was talking about that we really need. So, other questions, other comments?
I saw Johnson and then Commissioner Johnson and then to the chair. Commissioner Johnson? Oh, okay, we can go to the chair.
Commissioner Hall, you're on mute. There you go.
Yes, sorry, I had a problem finding the mute button for a second there. So do you need a formal recommendation from the commission to get that ongoing $350,000 for the 2 FTEs for recruitment?
Would we? Yeah, that would, yeah, we would need a recommendation from the commission. to support that.
And then the other question is, how much funding are you looking at for the other needs that the department needs for recruitment, the vehicles, travel, promotional, the new recruitment video, all those? Has that been put together and projected?
I think that 350 would be a good start. I think that would include the salaries. I think 50 for the video. And then again, if we're going to review some of these things quarterly, we can always come back and say, this is where we're at, this is what we need, or we're doing great.
And I think that is something I would want to see reviewed quarterly, that and the retention that Commissioner McDonald mentioned, making sure we have enough support for the officers, make sure that the department is a culture that supports officer well-being so that we do have healthy officers going out on calls. Okay.
So that our recommendation at this point is the 350. That would include all of those items, including salary, vehicles, travel, and so forth, right?
Correct. I
Okay.
believe that would be the recommendation.
All right.
The question is, do we want to make those recommendation motions now or save them for the end?
Well, I'm willing to make the motion now that we would recommend to the city council that they fund this full-time position.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
And this one, I think we should do an all in favor. All in favor? Raise your hand or
Aye.
say aye.
I,
Oh, aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, motion carries to recommend to the mayor and city council that the Salt Lake City Police Department be funded $350,000 for 2 full-time employees and various underfunding needs for recruitment efforts. Thank you. Back to you, Reverend Davis.
The next item number 4 regarding recruitment. Is that mine or is that somebody else's? Don't we have
That's still yours. It's just a continuation of the recruitment process.
oral interview process has no strategic approach to include communities of color or civilian members on panel. And we were very interested in making sure that there are community people engaged. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. That's extremely important to us as well. And the previous position of a recruiter would actually really help us with that. Like I said, we have a great partnership with HR and they sit with us at the table. It's important to have that strategy though. And if you don't have a map, sometimes you just blow in the wind. We need to know where we're going and what we're going to do and the positive steps we're going to take to get there. I know that as we put these teams together, in the past, we've had officers. And I think we've done a pretty good job, but I think we can do better. We should have civilian community members. We should have community members of color and different diversity and backgrounds to sit there. And I know that Commissioner Hawkins and I think Commissioner Prosperos came down and actually sat on some of these interviews with us. This was implemented back in the spring of 2020. And I think it was good to have that perspective. So going forward, this would be something that we would continue. We would love to have commissioners if you have the time, or we can identify a team of people that we could basically sit down and say at this day and time, we have 3 or 4 interviews or 10 interviews. We'd love to have somebody on the team come down and help us look for those officers that we need. Because, I mean, a lot of the skills, to be an officer, we can teach, but the skill of acceptance, character, compassion, those are things you have to kind of find. And those are what we're looking for. So that would be a great recommendation and a big help.
And I think we could help with that just by knowing when and where and what you're looking for at a given time. So if you'll keep us informed about those time frames, then we can certainly try and have somebody from the committee serve and volunteer some time. And we'll start with it that way.
We have a schedule typically when we're running our hiring process. So we know in advance when we're running our oral boards. So maybe
Okay.
you can get a list to Moana, and then we can coordinate through that on those who are interested, and having our interview coordinator reach out to those commissioners that might be interested and seeing what works for their schedule. The biggest thing is going to be consistency and being able to commit to 2 to 3 days to participate in that interview process, their oral board process.
Is it 2 to 3 days per time?
It just depends, sir. That's why if we can know who's interested, then we can coordinate with the individual to see if they can commit to the time in the process.
All right. All right, we'll get the schedule and then make it available so that people will know when they are available, and then they can, if people know ahead of time, perhaps they can schedule 2 or 3 days to help with this process. So we'd like to help. Next item. Another item regarding recruitment. There are no specific questions which allow for identification of the individual characteristics of the ideal candidate. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Yes, this would, in these last 2 or 3 recommendations kind of all run together. That again, this would be someone that would help us craft questions. And in talking to Director Alexander, Deb, she was talking about behavioral based questions that would help us seek out the best candidates to be police officers here at Salt Lake City. So again, the recruiter and the HR team that we had put together would help us craft those questions to find those ideal candidates we're looking for, but also help us in discussing the intent of what the questions mean and what we're looking for, and creating an awareness of creating an awareness on the recruitment team of any biases they may have, so that when we all sit at the table, we sit there looking at an individual and have them explain to us why they're the best candidate for our team. And then we do that very open and transparent. And again, this will work very hard with our HR partner and this new recruitment position. And I think this will really help us again make a strategy as to where we're going with our recruitment and hiring.
And I think this would also help the commissioners to decide whether they have the expertise in a given area at a given time to participate in that. So if we can perhaps continue to work on this and then provide guidance for the commissioners to help with that as well. Questions? Questions? All right, no questions. Thank you. I appreciate all of your participation in the training area, and we'll now turn you over to Mona and the school safety.
That will actually be me taking over for the school safety subcommittee. Okay, so the first issue was continued racial disparity in students who are interacting with school resource officers, or SROs, and I'll refer to them as SROs from here on out. The first recommendation is to extend the Memorandum of Understanding or the MOU on SROs. So Chief, how did the meeting with new Superintendent Getson go? And I had a few questions about the timeframes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Salazar. We had a good meeting. We had a meeting with Superintendent Gadsden and his team. They really value the partnership with our SROs and the police department. The whole goal is to make sure schools are safe, and he really wants to have the gold standard of a program here in Salt Lake City. So it was refreshing to hear his comments and the direction he wanted to go. As far as the MOU goes, I know one of the recommendations was the commission's recommendations was to get a 6-month extension. Is that right, Commissioner Hall?
So my understanding of the recommendation that we implemented with the MOU is that it would be extended for 6 months or until renegotiated, understanding that the emphasis was on renegotiating within 6 months, but also realizing that we do have 3 separate large government agencies working on this MOU, and that it cannot be done overnight or be expected to be done overnight. But really, again, emphasizing that expediency, that we do want to make sure that a new MOU is implemented that will not only meet the needs of the school district and the Salt Lake City Police Department, but also, and most importantly, the students.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that recommendation, we talked to Dr. Getz, and I think we thought the conversation would take us longer, and we thought we'd extend it to June of 2022. But in talking to Dr. Getz and his team, he would like to start the conversations now. There are some issues with the schools right now, and this is not just here in Salt Lake, it's across the country. With whatever COVID has brought, when schools weren't in session, it seems like some of the violence and some of the issues and concerns have magnified this year. And so he would love to start the conversations sooner than later. But again, there are the MOU, some of the things that we would like to talk about. There is actually law. There's legislation that was passed as far as how we as SROs interact with the students and what the administration's role is. So we are going to start those conversations first of the year and talk about where we need to go. So I'm looking forward to those conversations. Hopefully we'll have something in the next couple months that will be satisfied, that will be that gold standard that we're all looking for.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that there's a committee who was formed to rework the MOU. Do you know who was on that committee?
I think it was Sergeant Doug Tierling, and because he brings that institutional knowledge. Dr. Gadsden, and I don't know if he was on it, but some of his team, of course, our legal counsel, Mark Cottrell, and I think the legal counsel from the school district. So that was the genesis of the group, and we can expand it from there. But at least we want to get the conversation started.
Correct. And I know that one of the recommendations that is further down, but not included in this because it's not within your purview, is the full-time employee with the mayor's office regarding the school to prison pipeline. That position is not yet filled. I know because I'm on the hiring committee for that one. I think we're in the early stages of hiring, but when that position is filled, is there a plan to include that full-time employee in that committee?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I would agree. I think that would be a given. Yeah. Perfect.
And then do you have a meeting schedule created to work on the MOU, or is it more of a schedule it as we go sort of schedule?
Well, I had another meeting. Jump in there. Go ahead, Lieutenant.
So what the school district and Lieutenant Mitchell and his team, they're actually coordinating those meetings at their level. And then once they get it more solidified on the direction that we need to go, then the chief will be pulled in. And I actually get to sit in on some of those meetings as well. Everybody's reading through the MOU right now. And then we'll get together after the holidays, just due to the holidays. And then we'll hit it hard.
Can you give at least the school safety subcommittee that schedule? And I don't know if we can really sit in, and I'm fine if we can't because of certain policies, ordinances or whatever, but maybe if some of us would want to sit in, that might be helpful, just so we can listen and see what's going on. I know we don't have a vote or really anything beyond making recommendations.
I'll inquire and I'll ask and make sure that the school's okay with it and our legal as well.
Perfect. Right. Any other question? Oh, yes, Chief Brown.
Commissioner Hall, maybe this is one of the items that you would want a more frequent update on as we move forward.
Yes, yes. I would personally want a more frequent update on this issue. I'm not sure if a 60-day review is too quick.
Yeah.
But we could maybe put it on the agenda every 60 days and see if that's way too early, if there's nothing new to report from the last time we had an update.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
All right, any other questions on area 1? Okay, so moving on to the next.
Chair of Hall, before we move on, I do need to just inform you that Commissioner Johnson will need to leave early. So Mona will keep us informed about whether that takes our quorum or not. You understand that?
Yes, I
We
do.
we still have quorum.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know, Commissioner. Okay, so the next area is the Promising Youth Program. So the concerns were about barriers for at-risk youth and contributions to the school to prison pipeline. The recommendations are the Promising Youth Program reassess after 1 year to determine value within SLCPD. Allow all 10 SROs, at the time there were 10 SROs, to work in the summer program. Pure Court incorporating this into the Promising Youth Program and the Explorer Program, ongoing and increased funding, and SRO Oversight Committee.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Because of our staffing levels here at the Salt Lake City PD, and because of COVID, I mean, COVID wasn't in session last year. Or I mean, COVID was in session last year. What am I talking about? The schools weren't in session. So we reduced our SROs to 5, and they did a lot of great work. They helped distribute food. They found families. They tracked down the students that needed help. But we moved into the summer, and then we completed our summer outreach, and we graduated 42 youth from that program. I went to the graduation. It was really heartfelt to see the great work of these officers and Ashley Fletcher and her team, the outreach that was done, and the students were there. Their students and parents. It was really nice. We haven't had 1 full year of having the Promising Youth Program up and running in the schools. So at the end of this year, in June, will be the first full year that we've had the program running. So we've had 1 year of summer outreach, and then this is the first year. So I talked to Sergeant Doug Tierlink tonight and said we probably should review this in May or June and get back to the commission with an update of what we're doing and where we want to go with the program. In talking with him, he thinks the program is doing very well. We have Sergeant Doug Tierlink, his 5 SROs. We have 1 program director who's full-time, that's Ashley Fletcher. There are 7 part-time outreach workers that work about 28 hours a week, and they're distributed throughout the schools. And right now, there's a waiting list for students to get into this program. So it's doing very well. And the school refers the youth into this program, the SROs do. But the most important part is that it's the school, the SROs, and our outreach workers working together to help to find success for these students, not only in school, but in life. And so I think it's doing really well. And again, we can come back and maybe update you quarterly, but I really am excited of the work we're doing and where we're going. There are a lot of the positions are grant funded right now. 3 of the part-time case workers and outreach workers, their funding will run out in June. So with that review commission, I'd like to come back and maybe talk about our successes, what we need. And it could be that we look for either grant funding or full-time city funding for those positions. But everything that I'm hearing is that the program's running very well and we're doing a good job.
Okay, so Moana, could we put on the agenda review this in March? Specifically the funding piece. So we want to make sure that if this is going to be continue to be grant funded, that there's time to complete those grant requests. And if it looks like we need to do this on a more long-term basis, we have time to review this and their budget and make a formal recommendation.
I'm adding it.
Thank you. And then I had a question about Pure Court funding. Because is that also on just a grant basis right now, or do we have some long-term funding for Pure Court?
Is that for me?
Yes.
I will have to get back to you on that one, Commissioner. You
Okay.
got me.
Yeah, because that's also a valuable piece that we thought needed to be in place. Do you know how or who is in charge of making sure that Promising Youth, Peer Court, and the Explorers are working together? Because that was also something that we were looking at, is making sure that all three of those programs work together to maximize resources and outcomes.
I think Doug Tierlink is really driving that, and we don't have to wait for a quarterly report. We can maybe do this January or February, have Doug come in and talk about where we're going. He did, when I talked to him tonight, say that they have Promising Youth and the SROs and the Peer Court have all met and done the training together, so they understand the hand in glove relationship with these different programs.
Good. And then what are we doing to get, because right now there are only 5 SLCPD SROs when there were 10 originally when we were having these discussions and making these recommendations.
That goes back to that recruitment and hiring. We're working as hard and fast as we can. And one of the goals of the crime control plan is to be fully staffed come June of 2022. So when we get to that level and more, I would love to put back those other 5 because I think they pay huge dividends in the schools and the relationship and trust that they build. So it's on my mind, and I, along with a lot of different assignments, but that has a high priority with me in the department.
All right, any other questions about that those set of recommendations? All right, then I will turn over the time to the Policies and Practices Subcommittee Chair.
Is it Commissioner McDonald?
Yes, I think it's Commissioner McDonald.
Oh. So this is the area where we had went over. Can you guys, okay, you can't see me. Policies and Practice Area 1, police officer body worn cameras. The recommendation was for the Salt Lake City Police Department to strive to be the gold standard of best practices nationwide, make modifications to policy and ordinance 54.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. This body worn camera area has several recommendations, and they kind of blend together, but we can kind of go through this. We agree 100% with the recommendation of being the gold standard. And I want you to know that's something that we've been working on for a long time, and there's more work to do. I don't know of another agency in the state that has the reviews and the audits that we have. And I'm not sure there's anybody in the country that does what we do. But it's important, and we understand the recommendations. One of the things that we do here in Salt Lake City, and this moves into the second recommendation about use of force. I think it was in the early part of 2020, where part of our use of force policy, we adopted a review process that involves the field sergeant. If there's a use of force in the field, a sergeant will either respond, review the video, or will review it. And then from there, it'll be passed to a lieutenant who oversees the sergeant and the command of the watch, who will review it. And from there, it'll move to an internal affairs review to the lieutenant to make sure that it was completed and the proper documentation was done. And if there's any concerns or issues, it'll be referred into an internal affairs review process. So we're working hard on that. I think we're doing really well there. So any questions from the commission on that?
I remember one of the issues that was brought up about the capacity to be able to save the data. That was a huge conversation. I don't really see that being addressed. And I know that technology is what it is. And the ability to be able to save large quantities of data for certain periods of time became an issue, and it was a long conversation.
Yes, you're right, Commissioner McDonald. That's to save that much video for long periods of time is very costly. But I want to thank the mayor and the council. I think we have unlimited data storage. So we can purge different records by, there's different state laws that say at this time, if there's been no issues, concerns, you can delete them. But we have the capability here in Salt Lake City to keep that data indefinitely right now. So I think that's been solved with the commitment from the council and the mayor's office to fund that.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
And the second recommendation there was to audit all use of force reviews to determine if the reviews were conducted appropriately and if the outcome are within policy.
Yes, and that was the administrative the sergeant doing that administrative work, and then the lieutenant in internal affairs. So that is something we've been doing for months now, and it seems to be a very good practice.
Okay, and increase random BWC body worn camera reviews by an outside qualified individual from 5 to 20 per month, and include random sampling of officer videos as well as completed supervisor reviews and allow for direct selection.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner McDonald. Yeah, that as we talk about this was an external audit and not associated with the police department, where they would review 5 videos per month. But I think the commission said 5's not enough and they would like to see more. And so the number moved from 5 to 20. Right now, our legal counsel, Mark Cottrell, is fulfilling that task. I think it's on the list of the mayor's office to find a permanent position to review those. But Mark has been doing those. But again, this is one that we've got a good start on, but there's more work to be done. So we'll continue with that. And that might be something as we move forward that I'll come back and talk to the commission, because I know body worn camera is one of the things that we've committed to come back and talk to you quarterly about. There's many audits and reviews that are going on. This could be something we talk about quarterly and then annually as well.
Yes, I remember that was one of those other very long discussions.
Make a comment on that, Madam Chair. This is Allison from
Yes.
the council office.
Yes, please.
I just want to clarify that the chief referred to Mark Cottrell as our attorney. Technically, the employees of the attorney's office work for both the administration and the city council. And so I just want to emphasize that, because I think it's important to underline that Mark does not work for the chief. Mark works for the mayor and the council. And that's just to emphasize that there is this level of an outside review rather than someone who is working for the police department doing this review. Thanks.
Thank you,
That's a good-
Allison. And that is a good point. And I can say, knowing Mr. Cottrell for a number of years, and in full disclosure, I've known him for a lot of years, and we're on a board together. As an interim, I think Mr. Cottrell is a good choice. He is assigned to the Salt Lake City Police Department, but his years as a public defender, I think, give him a very good perspective on what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. And as an interim person, I think he is an appropriate choice until a full-time outside auditor can be found.
So that is as an interim person in that position. He's there as an interim.
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner Davis.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison, very much for that clarification. The next recommendation is something the chief has just alluded to here. Provide a record and report to the mayor and city council on a quarterly basis.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. Yeah, there are so many audits, and let me break this down a little bit. We have within the department the internal audits that our audit squad does as part of our CLIA recommendation. And I think you remember talking about CLIA. That's our certification, a national best practice certification. We have to do an internal audit. So our audit squad reviews 11 officers' videos per week. So they review 1,144 approximately videos per year for compliance. We also have the external review. That's our legal counsel, Mark Cottrell, who doesn't work for us. He works for the mayor's office, but we like Mark too. Then we have a council audit by ordinance. There needs to be a review to the council of body worn compliance to state law, but also if the cameras were turned on or off, if they were muted and what they were muted for, or if there was a malfunction. Right now, we are developing the technology that allows an officer to click the button and then to say, yeah, my camera was on, or if I muted it, here are the reasons why I muted it. And this can all be, will all be a searchable record. Right now, they have to type it into the body of their report, which is a needle in a haystack when you go back and try to report to the council. I mean, then you'll never find all those unless you read the hundred of 1,000 reports that are written. It just can't be done. So we were recognized at the Versadex conference for pioneering this technology, and they're building it into our CAD system and our RMS system so that they can just click the button, we can run the reports, and we can have that to review for the council. And I think some of the recommendations are that we could share that with the commission as well. In talking to Sergeant Mason Givens, and I know you guys know Sergeant Givens, he's been on some of the meetings and talk. He runs the audit squad. We would like to, I think we will have that technology up and running by January of 2022. So we can start running those reports and coming to the commission, to the council, and to the different entities and do these report outs of the internal process, the external process, the council review, and then the annual report that Mason puts together for our CLIA certification. It really talks about our compliance and our rating. That will be coming up here shortly, and I'd like to provide that to you as well. There are, I think, 22 different reviews that Mason and his team do that can all be shared, I believe, with the commission as well. So there's a lot of things that we'd like to kick off, and I think you're wise to probably have a review quarterly because there's so much to go over.
Did you say, Chief, that there would be 1,100 or 11,000 of these reviews done?
Internally, Mason and his team randomly select 11 officers per week and review and have their supervisors review their video to make sure it's there, and then to find it if it's not there to find out. So yeah, they're looking at approximately 1,100 videos per year. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but like I say, I think it's good. It's the transparency that it's the future of law enforcement, and I think that's a good review.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, thank you. The commission has recommended quarterly reports on matters pertaining to the Salt Lake City Police Department audit and inspection units finding on the body-worn cameras.
That's Commissioner McDonald. That just dovetails in the conversation we just had. This would be something that we would put together and review for you.
Yes, exactly. And the next one kind of goes into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Salt Lake City PD should inform the commission of any incidents reported to internal affairs.
Yes, and that just comes down to the format in which we can release it to you. Sometimes the officers' names are protected, but the synopsis of the allegations and things that occurred, or the compliance rate, all those things we can share. So we can definitely work through this.
Thank you. And pursuant to Ordinance 54, any findings of material non-compliance with state law, city code, and police department policy will be referred to the chief of police, the city attorney, the council chair, the mayor's chief of staff. These findings should also be reported to the commission.
And again, that's just following up on that same conversation Commissioner McDonald is the format and how we do it. But I think it can all be accomplished, and we'll be prepared the first quarter of next year to start having those reviews and to provide that information for you. I did talk to Sergeant Givens tonight, and he will have the year-end compliance rating CALIA report on body worn cameras that will be done in January. And perhaps we can have him come in to one of our meetings to discuss our compliance and how we can do better.
Thank you.
When in January will that one be done? Maybe we can time it with our meeting.
I'll get with Mason, and I'll let Moana know, and then she can get back to everybody.
Perfect. So either it'll be in January where we review it, or in February, depending on the timing of when that report is finished in our meeting schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and providing the annual report to CALIA and share with the commission.
Yeah, that was the conversation we had. There are 22 different reports that Mason and his team put together, and they review the various things that we need to make sure that we're looking at policies, use of force, all those things. And those reports are done to maintain that CLIA certification. And some of those may be something that the commission would like to look at or have discussions about. So as he puts those together for the year end, again, we can talk to Moana, and perhaps there are some of those reports that you'd like to have discussion about.
And then I believe this is the last one. Salt Lake City should strive for an advanced accreditation and explore cost, resources, and benefits.
There is no cost. There's no additional cost. It's more work, and there may be some staffing needs. But as you move up to that gold standard in CLIA, there may be. I was talking to Mason. He said, "Well, you may need to do some work in your interview rooms. You may need to have different cameras and things like that. So there may be some infrastructure costs and some things like that, but there was really no cost for the certification." So I know we talked about that, Commissioner McDonald, in our meeting, and it was something I know that you recommended. So again, I think, Mason, we ought to come back and talk about it and look about moving it to the next level.
And I want to say thank you very much for being here and for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I just noticed, Allison, is your hand still up from the last time, or were you chiming in?
Sorry about that.
And this is still me, isn't it?
Yes, sorry.
No.
Gee, we kept you for a while, didn't we? Oh my goodness. Wow.
I told you the meeting for us here.
Well, let's talk about implicit bias. Well, the recommendation was the survey shall be developed, administered, analyzed, and disseminated by a third party as agreed on by the commission and funded by the city. This survey shall be modeled after the Pew Research Center 2016 National Survey of Law Enforcement Officers. The results should be shared with the commission. I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good recommendation. But the conversation, at first, I think there was some conversation that the police department, if they wanted to measure implicit bias, it shouldn't be developed by us. It probably needs to be done by a third party.
Mhm.
It probably is, when we were talking to Commissioner Prosperos, he was talking about maybe a university study. So I think it's more, not so much a survey, it's a study. And that's going to take some cost. In talking with Deb Alexander, our HR director, she figured to do it right and to have the proper documentation, and it would be about $100,000. I think we could probably get a really good product, but again, it needs to be a third party, and it should be somebody that comes in and helps us through this process, not developed by us.
Thank you.
Question on that, would that be something that we could keep using in the future with new, just periodically, because I don't think this is going to be a one and done sort of review. It'd have to be something that's ongoing to make sure that the department's culture is still where it should be, where we want it to be. So is that something that we could have? I don't want to say that that's just the one-time cost of the study. I'm sure it would have to be updated, but what would the cost be moving forward with updating it and making sure that this is being done on a, I don't know, every few year basis, maybe every 5-year basis?
Yeah, Chair, that's a good point. I don't think if we identified somebody to do that study, whoever it might be, once the study is kind of established or put together, the protocol, I think redoing it every 2 or 3 years or 5 years wouldn't be as heavy of a lift. But that's a good point. If you really want to measure how you're doing, it can't be a one and done. So
I thought we had put in there how often, but maybe not. But I thought we did, and whether or not it would be an annual process or a biannual. Maybe not, but I thought we did.
You know, commissioners, what I can do is, in talking with Deb, we can reach out to some different partners, maybe a university or a private firm, and get an idea of what it would take, and then come back to you with a better estimate as to the time and cost and the resources that'll be needed.
Thank you. Community-based training on the history of policing with people of color. Recommendation, funding, development, and delivery of community-based training on the history of policing of people of color.
Yeah, this is something that we put a lot of thought into. And again, this is something that we need to find the right individual or the group of individuals to come in and help us to develop this curriculum. We'll be working with the mayor's equity team to identify and create a list of accomplished and skilled individuals that can help us develop that program. We recently, Lieutenant Zayas and myself, heard a presentation from the chief from Sacramento, and he talked about racism in policing, and he went back in, he went back several hundred years and talked about how policing was used, and it was really good to hear him to walk us through that. And I would like to reach out to him to see if he would be willing to maybe do that. He's retiring, so I don't know what he's moving on to, but it was very fascinating to hear that, his presentation. And then I think if we could move from that 30,000-foot view to talk to our communities that here in Salt Lake City, and get a perspective from those those different communities. But I think we need to do it strategically. We need to have a very good product and curriculum that we roll out. And again, it shouldn't be something that we teach ourselves. This would be much better coming from experts and people that live in our community, because I think it would resonate much more with our police officers. We could do that not only in our new academies, but we can do that in our in-service as well.
Who did you say did this training?
It was Police Chief Hahn from Sacramento.
Thank you.
So we'll keep working on it. We'll come back with some suggestions. There may be some cost. Well, there will be some cost to it. You're not going to get the caliber of professional teachers, educators, to come in and do this. I think we talked about this when the state did it. They hired, I think there was some professors from UVU down in to do it, and there was some cost associated with that. So we'll be working with Moana and Coletta and her team to to give you a better idea of what we need. But we have some ideas of what we think would be really good, and then we'll throw them out on the table, and I'm sure you'll have good ideas as well.
Thank
What's
you.
a good time frame to follow up on this, Chief?
What are you thinking? What do you have in mind?
It's really up to you and what you have on your plate. Are you thinking follow up on this in March, or will there be something more soon? Or
Let's go March, and I'll see if what under promise over deliver. Maybe I can get something put together sooner.
perfect.
I wonder, Commissioner Hall, as we finish up this report and we all have time to digest the information, et cetera, maybe we can put on a future meeting to come back and look at the priorities of the work that still needs to be done. And maybe we're asking the chief a lot of questions about recommendations that we've made. So now I feel like we're having a balance between what we're asking, the way they're interpreting it, the way they're able to accomplish those requests. And then maybe there's a little more clarity that we could bring to the table as a commission to help the chief and the department make these decisions. I was going to kind of hold that till the end, but we're just asking a few questions on every single one. Anyway, as a potential agenda item, maybe we can digest this and talk about how we as a commission view next steps from our point of view.
I think that is a great idea, Commissioner DeWarden. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think we should put that as an agenda item in January. Give us some time to think about things. I know I read through the report and I reread our phase 1 report with the recommendations. And I think based on this conversation, I'll need to think more about this as well. And there is, as Ms. Hawkins pointed out at the beginning of this meeting, that it's a lot to digest. So I think that's a very good idea. And it makes a lot of sense to have this on the agenda for January 2022.
And maybe it would be a good idea to give some thought also to local parties like the Highway Patrol use local professors to do some of that work. And so maybe we could think of some of those names and find out who they use also.
It's a great idea, Reverend Davis. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Back
very
to you,
much.
Commissioner McDonald.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Oh, I
Andre-
just wanted to add real quick that we, sorry, Commissioner McDonald, that we have been compiling a local group. Coletta and I have already started that. So we can compare notes at our next meeting. So just quick.
Thank you. So area 4, we have co-response mental health. Focus on communities of color, reach out to those communities and provide more community policing in these areas and build trust.
That is, that's a priority for the police department. We've been working hard on that. We've started a group, and I'm going to kind of jump into the next recommendation. Well, it's down the line a little bit, and it talks about we have a Latino Coalition that we've been meeting with for several years. Leaders and representatives from the Latino communities that we sit down and talk with. After some of the violence and some of the things that we saw this summer, we reached out to the refugee community as well, and we've been meeting with them on a monthly basis. And then in that same vein, we reached out and talked to our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander group. And so we started 3 community groups. And in the conversations, they've been very supportive of policing, and they want to have more input on how we police their communities. And that's a good thing. But they want resources for their youth. They want resources as parents. They want more than just what we can provide as law enforcement. I mean, we're a big part of it. But the mayor's office, I think Coletta's accompanied me to a few meetings. Moana, did we go to any meetings? Have you been to any of those meetings? So
Yeah.
Now you have the police department going to these meetings and representatives from the mayor's office. So we're working together to provide better service to the communities that we serve here in Salt Lake City. But in doing that, we're building better relationships and trust. And so as we talk about that, I think that is having a big impact in the communities we serve. And it's something that we're going to push hard on and continue with. Did you want to, Moana, did you want to say anything more on that?
Yeah, so I've been attending the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander meeting. And though also part of that is like, that's where we've been meeting some groups that are potential community-based organizations that could do history and do trainings. So I think that that has been a good outcome of just attending those meetings as well.
And I kind of jumped ahead, Commissioner McDonald, and I went to page 16, and that was understanding how communities are being policed and how they want to be policed, and engage each of the city's community councils and its communities. And we talked about that, those different groups that we're meeting with. So they're so close and they dovetail together. I jumped into that one as well. So I think we knocked out 2 with that.
Question about, are you meeting with any of the Black communities?
That's on our radar. I'm gonna reach out to well, Pastor Davis we've always had a great relationship with Calvary Baptist Church, and Pastor Moses. I've asked him to be a part of our new CAB, our Community Advisory Board, and I think he's going to accept that. So again, we'll continue with that great relationship that we fostered under Reverend Davis of his leadership down there as well.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the Black community is also involved.
Yeah.
I know that this probably ties in more with Commissioner Salazar Hall, but the recent spike in, and I don't know if it's a spike, but it's just definitely more attention to the recent cases of racism in our schools and how we can work with the school resource officers and leaders within the Black community to address what's happening in our schools within the Black community. Is that something that is being looked at, being discussed? Have anyone reached out to pastors of churches or anything to say, okay, we have a problem here? Has anything happened at all with that?
We recognize there's a problem, Commissioner McDonald. And we do have some relationships with some of the Black leadership in our community, but we need to do more. Absolutely. And I know you're very active in that group, and perhaps you can help us with those efforts as well.
Well, Commissioner McDonald wrote a letter, and I don't know if you saw it, Chief, but I think that would be a great piece to take a look at.
No, I'd love to. I don't know if I've seen that, Commissioner McDonald. Maybe you can email that to me, or perhaps after the holiday we can sit down and have a meeting and talk about where we need to go. That would be great.
Absolutely. I would definitely welcome that. And I'm sure there'll be others that would love to be a part of that meeting as well. I know we jumped ahead, so did we address a lot? I can just expand the co-responders.
Yes, let me jump into there real quick. I know this has been one of your recommendations. You see the value in having those social workers in our ranks and working with our law enforcement, and so do we. We just expanded the number of full-time social workers within our community commitment program here. The problem is social workers are in such high demand. There's just not enough of them to go around right now. So we've identified a few. We've offered, I think, 3 of them jobs, but we're still continually, we're still trying to hire more social workers to fill those vacancies. They're really worth their weight in gold. I mean, so many calls that we go on are mental health issues, or individuals that have addiction issues and concerns. And so They're not so much really a law enforcement, yet we tend to be the tip of the spear on a lot of the things that we address. So thank you, commissioners, for your recommendations for those social workers. As our staffing increases, as we get our social workers on board, there's so much more we can do. Some of the calls that we're looking to, and this is page 15, that we're looking to address are violent psychological issues, suicidal individuals, welfare checks, homeless calls, suspicious person, unwanted person, substance abuse, and any crisis encounter. Our social workers right now, they come on duty. They're available to our officers in the field. Our officers go call to call. We're very busy, but when they know the social workers are out there, they'll call for the team, and they'll meet them down there. We just don't have enough officers to pair up with social workers right now. As we move forward with our hiring, we hope to be there, hopefully 6 months, maybe a year. But I think it's a proven program that has paid huge dividends in our community. And I thank the commission for your recommendation and your support of it.
Question on not being able to find enough. I know that mental health professionals, that is, there's a big challenge with that lately. How much are we paying those social workers?
Let me get back to you on that. I think they recently, because they weren't getting, I mean, the private sector can pay so much more. I think that they reevaluated the starting pay, and I think it's helped in our recruitment. But there's just the demand for social workers right now is just off the chart.
And it's not just social workers, it's therapists. I know several substance use treatment facilities in town are facing similar issues, and the biggest issue is the pay. There are some facilities who are, I guess, more privately funded than others, are willing to pay quite a bit more above market level. So that's a big question for me, is how much are we offering to pay these social workers? Is it going to be competitive? And I know we'll never be able to be fully competitive with the private sector, but can we be as competitive as some of the more nonprofit level agencies here in town?
Yeah, I tell you what, let me look at it and I'll get back to you. That's something I can easily report back. Moana, if you'll make a note and remind me. One thing that we've done, Mayor Mendenhall asked that we reach out to the School of Social Work up at the University of Utah to see if we couldn't start an internship down here where we could pay the interns to come down and work with our team down here for a quarter or a semester, just to get them, to introduce them to what we're doing in law enforcement. Sometimes there's a divide. They come out of school with their degree and they don't really understand how social workers are playing such a valuable role in law enforcement. So that would be a really neat program. The discussions are ongoing. Jessica Waters, our social worker director, is working with his staff up there, their staff, to help develop that curriculum. Give me a couple months and remind me, and I'll give you an update on that. That would be really neat.
Are we by chance also trying to recruit outside of the state by chance?
I don't know how far and wide our recruitment goes. Again, that recruitment specialist that we talked about in that $350,000, that person wouldn't just be for officers. That would be for social workers, civilians, whatever we need. So that could help us there as well. That's a good point.
Oh, sorry, Chief. I just wanted to note that Commissioner Eldridge dropped off. We still have quorum, but if anybody else leaves, we'll have to, we won't have quorum.
Chief, I would also recommend that maybe in your search for funding for this type of work, that you take a look at the Huntsman Corporation and what they're doing. They've just allocated a large amount of money to UNI, and they are particularly concerned about the issues that are listed here as issues that we need co-responders for.
That's a great point.
They may be willing to fund a position or two.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. That's a great idea. I will, again, want to make my list and we'll get back to you. I do know the Huntsman family, and I can easily reach out to that group and find out what they're doing.
Great.
Okay, we're kind of in between. Okay. Collaborate with public safety to understand how 911 calls are being taken and directed.
Yes, let me, this is, I can probably get through a couple of these real quick here. We have a new 911 director here, Stephen Meyer. He's been here for about a month, and in talking with him, he has some great ideas about how we can work with our dispatch partners to make sure that we can triage calls to see if, I mean, not every call that comes into dispatch needs a police response. There are other teams out there. There are other individuals that are much better suited for some of those things. But even if we do go, perhaps this is something that's triaged and vetted and is sent to our co-responder team. Or maybe it's a telephonic response that we can use. So in working with Director Myers, we're going to look at a list of calls, a lot of different calls that we go on. If there's an individual, a lot of calls, I mean, they come in and Commissioner Andrew Warden will understand this. They're called a man down call. That's just what we call them. Somebody that may be down, perhaps intoxication or whatever it could be. Is that the best use for law enforcement? Could a medical team go and assess that? Because that really is a medical issue. And the fire department is looking at is expanding their work with social workers as well. So we're looking at a lot of different options that would help us focus on the things that we need to do, the 911 calls, the emergency responses that we need, so that we can lower crime and lower our response times, and actually find maybe a better fit for some of those calls that kind of fall to law enforcement by default. So maybe this would be something that we bring Director Myers to a meeting. We are, like I say, we're looking at a call diversion program based on some of your recommendations to do that very thing. So he needs to get a little bit of time under his belt, and we'll get going on that. In fact, we've had those conversations, but we're going to start putting those type of calls up on the board and say, maybe that law enforcement, that's not our call, or at least the first default.
Yeah. And you pretty much went into that next one, understanding how communities are being policed and add mental health to that. Yeah, so all of that kind of under the same umbrella. I don't mean to kind of, put it all together, because all of this is very, very, very important. But you hit up on pretty much all of them previously as well. But if you want to go into anything else, like the Salt Lake City Police response or to any of these, by all means, feel free to do so. But I do know that you have touched upon them.
Yeah, Commissioner McDonald and Commissioners, the very last one is establishing a civilian force response to handle certain types of calls. We're doing that very thing right now. We've put out the job description, and we've had about 30 or 40 individuals say that they would like to be a part of this team and do that. It's a great start, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take good policy, good practice, and supervision. But I think it's going to be, it'll bring value to our department to have those police civilian response team that can go out and take care of some of these very low level crimes that just don't need an officer to respond to. So we're working on that as well. So that takes us through 17 pages of recommendations.
All right, do we have any questions about any of the recommendations?
The
I
last
do,
recommendation, Chief, is one that the Newark, New Jersey Police Department has been looking at as well. And they have reduced their crime rate significantly by having a civilian team to go out. So maybe that's a place to look for some suggestions. Newark, New Jersey.
I'll make a call. Thank you.
Right. And Commissioner McDonald?
Mine was also about that last recommendation as well. And I was just curious as to how it was being put together, who was going to be in charge of it, and when we could hope to have an update on that, because that is something that is Commissioner Davis has said that I'm interested. I'm interested in all of it, but I know what they've done out in Newark, New Jersey as well.
I'll tell you what, can you give me into January? I think I can update you a little sooner than quarterly on that, because we've got a team here working on some of these things.
Perfect. So January agenda, then that'll be good because I'm interested too.
Yeah. But commissioners, I just want to say thank you. I mean, there's a in those there's a mountain worth of work in those pages there, but it's all good work. And I want you to know we're committed to it. Some of it we've accomplished, and I appreciate your suggestions. Some of it's going to take some time, and I appreciate your support. I know that we're excited to work with you, and your recommendations and really your support goes a long way with what we're trying to do. So thank you.
I do want to thank you and Lieutenant Zayas, Sergeant Tierlink, for putting a lot of work into this. It is apparent how much work Lieutenant Zayas has been putting into this and how much work you've put into this. I know we still have a very long way to go. And Lieutenant Zayas, I saw your thank you in the chat. But thank you for your help with this. We can't have a police department that serves everybody in the community and can make everybody in the community feel safe without your work. Do we have any other questions, comments about the report or the recommendations? Yes, Commissioner Underwood.
Can I say briefly, and I can't, but I'll do the best that I can because everybody wants to go. Did a lot of listening today. I often have comments, and I do have some follow-up statements that I think we can discuss as a commission. But overall, I just really want to express some themes in this. One is that it's clear that the department is listening and responding, and that in and of itself is a huge change. And there is a lot of work that's being done to take the recommendations that we've made seriously. And that's just really powerful. And Mike, I think that's attributed to your leadership skills, that it is in fact important to you, and you're doing what you say, and that means a lot. I also appreciate just the existence of this commission, because lots of good work. We've done a lot of good work to be able to give those recommendations. And now we're seeing a return on that investment with the work, one, and two, with the transparency. It's now an opportunity for that information to come back to the community, so the community can see that the department is actually doing what they say that they're doing. And we have some work to do, obviously, between community and law enforcement, and particularly certain segments of community and law enforcement. The more opportunity we can find to give that transparency and to show that that change is occurring, then the stronger we'll be in the long run, right? And then the easier it'll be. So I'm just excited how that's all coming together. Some will say we're not doing enough. I feel like we're doing a ton, and we're going to continue working. And I just wanted to make sure we acknowledged all that. So thank you, Chief, to you and your staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. And your word, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Chair Hall, Coletta has also joined us for part of our meeting, so you might acknowledge her.
Yes, I did notice that our Chief Equity Officer, Coletta Lynch, has joined us. Thank you for joining us, Coletta.
Hi, I'm sorry that I was late. I was running from another meeting, but I did hear half of the response from SLCPD, and I just want to also echo the sentiments. Thank you, Chief, for working with our team to get this response together. And thank you, Lieutenant Zayas, and to all of your team, Chief, for the work that you all put in for this response. And I also just want to say thank you to Moana for all that she's done. Thank you to the City Council staff. And thank you, commissioners, for your time and your dedication to this process. We appreciate every one of you, and any way that we can continue to be supportive, please let us know. I just want you all to know I was sitting over here taking notes, and so I have some action items that I'm going to follow up with Moana about. I'm also going to go back and ask Rachel and the mayor some additional questions to get some more information. Specifically, one of those items was the peer court funding. And so I'll make sure to follow up with them, and then to come back with Chief and follow up with you all about that piece. So thank you.
Thank you, Coletta.
Thank you.
Well, commissioners, can I just say thank you? I appreciate, look, we've sat in a lot of meetings for well over a year. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate your suggestions. Look, we can't do this alone. So Coletta, Moana, and commissioners, thank you. It's a valuable partnership, and it can never be one and done. This is going to be a process. And I just want to thank you all and wish you all a very happy holidays as well.
Yes, and Chair Salazar Hall, if it's okay, I also wanted to just thank the community too for their feedback, because I know that we can't do this without the community and the people. So I just want to say, you know, much of the feedback that we got from them has also helped to inform many of the responses and the information that was in that phase 1 report. So thank you to community members and to the public.
Yes, agreed. Thank you, Coletta. That is absolutely correct. We couldn't do this without the rest of the community helping us out and providing feedback and informing us better of what needs to be done. Okay, well, I don't see a need for a tentative closed session. And I do not think there's anything else left on our agenda. So do we have a motion to end the meeting for December 20th, 2021?
I move we adjourn the meeting for 2021 and wish everybody a great holiday and Christmas.
Yes. Any?
I would like to second that.
Awesome. Well, everyone have
Happy holidays.
yes, have a lovely, safe holidays, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I really appreciate everybody's hard work and dedication. Peace.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.